Hi, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with the week of reading wrap up where I talk about books that I read, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week. Um, I did a bit of reading, a lot more audiobooks recently. And this span is not specifically just last week. This is kind of reaching a little bit further back because I put up many of my best of videos. And so to not clog not clog everyone's feed up with all of my videos, I decided to not also do a week of reading last week. So, yeah, I have a few books to talk about, so let's just jump right in. The first book, again, I did in audio. I forgot to write the narrator's names, so I'll put that in the notes below because they were magnificent. This, ironically, is a book that I saw and was curious about the last time, so it must have been last summer. I was at Daunt in London, and this author walked in. You could tell there was something happening. There was going to be like an event there. They were setting up and everything. And this author walked in. She's a very young woman. And you could just tell she was just beaming with joy and pride. And she had a bunch of people with her. And she just looked like she was having the time of her life. And this turns out this is her second book. And Daunt did the launch. And her book is Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. This book is incredible. This book is really, really good. It's set in the 1970s, and it has this kind of true crime aspect or vibe or feel about it. But then that's peeled back to show even further a lot of complexity and a lot of the way the framing of a few facts can really lead a story to go in a direction that it shouldn't. So the story opens with this guy, Tom, and he is a reporter, and he's got that lust for the story. He is ambitious. He really wants to get ahead, and he's like a bloodhound seeking like what's the story that's going to make him. Where can he stick his nose in? What can he find out? And as he is out one evening, he hears about the fact while he's picked up this woman. They're at her place. I guess she lives in a council estate, and they hear that there's a kid that's missing, a child that's missing, and so he goes out among those people who live there, and he's trying to figure out what's happening. And he insinuates himself into the situation, acting as if he's someone who's trusted. And he's staying with his old friend, so and so. I don't even remember her name. I bet he didn't either. And it was just meant to be like a one night stand, kind of thing. And he starts to hear about this young child who is missing, and that the child was last seen playing with one of those children deemed off, not good, bad, and coming from a bad family. And that family is an Irish family that immigrated and that have had some troubles that have been actually exacerbated since the mother died. So he is on the hunt. He's got his story. And he gets gleefully excited, exuberant even, when they find the child dead. So he goes into hyperdrive because he was one of the first people on the scene, and he has all this backstory that nobody else has. So that's one storyline that kind of starts a propulsion forward. Then we have the other storyline of Carmel, and Carmel is a young woman who is really lost. She was in a relationship and got pregnant, didn't want to face what was about to happen. Her mother finds out, and her mother decides to help her and to help raise the child. Now, Carmel and her brother Richie are, they're young adults. should be living on their own, but both of them, because of poverty, because of other reasons, are both living in the house. Carmel never really bonds with her daughter. She very much abdicates responsibility and leaves it up to her mother to help and to provide the love that she doesn't feel at all for anything, or doesn't feel specifically for Lucy. Lucy is therefore challenging and troubled and struggles and is inappropriate and all of those types of things. So you see all of this backstory of this very difficult family. And as I mentioned, it only got worse when Carmel's mother dies and the family then has to handle things on their own. You can see how the people living in this building would point fingers and would assume the worst. It's a slow unraveling of how did we get here, instigated by the prodding of Tom as this investigative reporter who's determined to use whatever means he needs to get the story. This was gripping. It was heartbreaking, and it was really, really fantastic. I thought this was amazing. I would be surprised if this doesn't show up in the Women's Prize. So fingers crossed that it appears on the list. So going from a high, this was horrible. this was bad. I've read a few of these and I've been intrigued, not in love with them, but they were amusing. I didn't take them very seriously. I used them as palate cleansers, as like, oh, that was fun, types of romps. This one was just flat out bad, in my humble opinion. This is the Heiress by Rachel Hawkins, her latest in her retellings, or her taking a nugget of a story from a classic and then modernizing it. So the story that she's kind of building from here is Great Expectations. And we have the story of Ruby. Ruby is an old lady who has just died. And she lives in North Carolina in Ashby Place, which is this gigantic mansion, very stately, old money in Asheville, North Carolina, in a town called Tavistock, North Carolina. And she was kidnapped when she was young. She's the child of very, very wealthy parents. And she was kidnapped, and it was like this huge sensation. Kind of think of Lindbergh baby type of thing. She was eventually found and reunited with the family. She was gone for a pretty good stint of time, enough time for the mother and father to have another child. And that child is nonplussed when this older sister shows back up. So there's always been this rivalry between these two women, and each still live in this huge mansion. She passes away and leaves everything to her son Cam. Cam is an adopted son, and she leaves everything to him. No, despite the fact that he has left and pushed the money aside, pushed everything aside, feeling like it was tainted. There's just too much anger, bitterness, and recrimination in the family. He left two cousins who also live in the house and walked away from it and set up a new life in Colorado, met his wife Jules, and it lives very simply. The story is told by a few different perspectives. You get Cam's perspective, and you get Jules' perspective. You also have another perspective, which is Ruby, who her tale is told through letters that she's been leaving for Cam. Jules, when she finds out that there's an opportunity to go back to his home that she's never seen, but she knows something about it, she jumps at the chance because she thinks that he needs to reconcile with his family and that'll heal something in him. And she's quite curious to see all of the things that make up her husband. There's ultimately a ton of backstabbing, a lot of mysteries and threads that are left, things that are thrown out there, a lot of repetition, a lot of histrionics, a lot of kind of silly things that you could see coming and then were like just so over the top. I just thought it was a lot of hyperbole, a lot of dramatics for no reason. This one did not work for me. The other ones kind of barely skimmed the surface. They were kind of fun and interesting, but this was, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So I'm just going to leave that there. That might be my last Rachel Hawkins, I have to say. Well, now let's go to my first of an author that I've been meaning to read for a very, very long time. And I haven't known where to start. And for some reason, I needed a Kindle book at night when I go in to wind down. And this was on my Kindle. This is The Black Notebook by Patrick Modiano. This was translated by Mark Polizzoti. I think that's his name. I'll put the information below. This was my first Modiano, but this will not be my last. This was moody, kind of. Imagine a Paris evening, really foggy, hard to see, kind of miragey, lights glistening in the background, like a noir. Definitely had like a noir, mysterious, opaque kind of vibe. I'll admit it took me a little bit to get into it because you're just kind of dropped in and there wasn't a lot of context. So it took me a bit to figure out that was the point. We weren't going to get a backstory or a purpose laid out immediately. We were going to have to feel our way in the dark to kind of put this story together. And the story is that Jean is in his older years, and he is reflecting back on his youth in the 1960s and about a love that he had, this woman named Danny. Now, this was a time in Paris when he was a student. He was meeting other students, and there were a lot of Algerians in Paris because the Algerian War was over. So there's a lot of political tension, a lot of racial tension because of that situation. And he meets these people, but he's really attracted to this woman, Danny, and she is very enigmatic. She kind of lives on the periphery and breaks a ton of rules, but does it with this kind of quiet finesse that just shocks him. Her ability to just do bold things quietly and surreptitiously excites him. And plus she's beautiful. So he starts to become involved with her and following her around, not really sure if he's her boyfriend, a patsy, an accomplice in some cases, an alibi in others. He's never really sure. He's also never really sure what is her real name. He goes with her to a post office, but then he has to wait while she goes in, and he sees that the letters are not to her name, but to another name. There's all of these questions and all of this mystery surrounding her. But he knows that she's in trouble. And he suspects it might be some of the crowd that they know. He knows a lot less about them, but she's more intertwined. So we really get this story told in fragments. He's reading through a black notebook that he used to keep because he wanted to be a writer and has become a writer. And he's really seeing these tiny fragments and then taking that fragment and creating the backstory, remembering why he wrote that, what happened there, what is it connected to. And at a certain point, his memories become much more fleshed out when he is given a file from a policeman who was involved in a case that he was pulled into because of his connections with these people. So it was, I'm not going to say any more. It was a little a little mysterious, a little disconcerting, a little disorienting. But Paris at that time really comes through. You a really good sense of some of the challenges that were happening because of the tensions of the Algerian War with France, and the Algerian War for Independence, and overall fantastic introduction to Modiano. It does seem that Berkeley used bookstores love Modiano, because I have a lot that I found in bookstores here. So let me show you a few. So what I'm looking for is, please tell me which one I should read next if you've read Modiano. This is Honeymoon. And this one, it says, winner of the 2014 Nobel Prize for Literature. I have After the Circus. I'm not a big Circus fan, so this one makes me a little not so sure, but so we'll see. This one is Suspended Sentences. Now this one says this is the winner for the Nobel Prize in Literature. So I'm wondering if he just won the Nobel Prize in Literature. This is a really, Suspended Sentences, really gorgeous cover right there. I'm not sure if you can see it in the glare. This is So You Don't Get Lost in the Neighborhood. Right there. I still remember getting this in Daunt Books. This is Villa Triste. And the cover completely pulled me in. This one I remember buying in Copenhagen last year. This is La Place d'Étoile. And this is Paris Nocturne. So please let me know if you've read any of those and which ones you liked, where you think I should start if you are a Modiano fan. Then I have two similar books, or two related books by topic that I listened to in audio. The first one's brand new. It is Get the Picture, a mind-bending journey among the inspired artist obsessive art fiends who taught me how to see. And this is by Bianca Bosker. Bianca Bosker is a journalist who loves to do these kind of like singular topic, deep dives, and then write a book. I think she did something like Cork Dork, I think was the title, where she went really deep into the wine industry. And I think she's known for trying to pull out all sorts of different aspects of a topic and kind of get inside. So she's doing that type of research in the art world. And her whole premise was, what makes good art? How does a person understand it? How do you build your muscles? How do you have an eye? What does it mean? What does art mean? And so she tries to answer this question by meeting people and working alongside them and getting them to bring her into the fold. And so she does this whole range of different roles and jobs. And it's kind of told chronologically of like where her first in was. And so she meets this gallery owner who's kind of enigmatic, kind of paranoid, trying to keep her at bay to a certain degree, because he's worried about her spilling too many secrets about the art world, but he also could use the publicity. So he's kind of leveraging this push-pull thing. She works at a gallery. She goes down to Art Basel in Miami and works there and is trying to sell art. She is an assistant to an artist. She inadvertently ends up being a model. She also inadvertently gets involved or volunteers in this moment of boldness for this really hilarious setup. I can't even tell you. I can't even begin to explain it because I'll just start laughing. For this performance artist, and the performance artist said, "Okay, who's next?" And she got there late, and she assumed that other people had done it too, and she wanted to kind of understand it a little bit more, and so she volunteers. Turned out only like 2 people had gone before her, and so it was like it wasn't like not a lot of people were offering to do this thing. So she does that, becomes friends with that performance artist. I mentioned she was an assistant to another artist. It was like stretching canvases and trying to understand her process. She even became a guard at the Guggenheim, and all along she has this kind of eager enthusiasm that she's trying to tap down and trying to be cool and trying to, prove that she can be someone who also is worthy of being in the art world. And it's just really funny because it's against her nature. But all along, she gets little understanding of how the art world works, how they view their role, some of the challenges of the art world, why it's so insular, but from both class, race, and gender, sometimes manner, and just a ton of things. I just found it really fun, and I liked her just willingness to just go straight into it and wide-eyed and wanting to explore and understand. You could see how she would probably be really obnoxious to have around, because of all the questions and the enthusiasm and just the prying nature of a journalist. But I'm glad she did, because I learned a lot and I found it to be a fun adventure. The audio was very good. And so getting done with that led me into another book that I've seen that I wanted to check out in audio. So I immediately just looked for it. And it is Art is Life, Icons and Iconoclasts, Visionaries and Vigilantes, and Flashes of Hope in the Night by Jerry Saltz. So Jerry Saltz is a art critic. He's been an art critic for The Village Voice and then also New York Magazine. He's also won awards. He won a Pulitzer for art criticism in 2018. And I was curious, so after reading this about the art world, I was curious to hear what an art critic, how they would talk about the same world. And I was really pleasantly surprised. Jerry Saltz considers himself, in his own words, wanting to be like a Bob Ross or Sister Wendy, not someone who just kind of talks to the insiders and preaches to the choir and uses that same language and maintains that insularity of the art world. He wants to break out and talk to people who are interested in art and who are moved by art, but maybe don't know a lot about it. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. And so this is a collection of different pieces that he's written over time, about 20 years of them. And he takes on certain topics like fears for the art world of implications of certain things, like implications of like ridiculous sales in auction houses, and how auction houses, when a sale happens, and this is something that Bianca Bosker talked about too, when a sale happens in an auction house, it's only between the person who had bought the art and then the next person. The artist doesn't get any kind of cut of that. The gallery gets no kind of cut of that. And so it creates this drive for buying art as an investment as opposed to art for the quality of the art and the emotional resonance it creates. And so it creates this monetary system that forces value on things that maybe the most important art would not be valuable to the types of people buying that type of art, because they want a specific aesthetic, a specific style. They don't want to be necessarily provoked, questioned, attacked, anything like that. And so sometimes the more political art never makes it to some of these places. And if it never makes it to some of those places, into some of those homes, it may not then be gifted and donated to the museums, which then the museums create the institution that creates the canon. And so even though I knew all this, hearing like the full details of all this was very, very interesting. He talks a lot about what happened with the pandemic and the way he and his wife were really worried about artists and worried about these small galleries that were kind of the lifeblood. You know, galleries don't really make a lot of money. And so how are the galleries going to stay open? How are the artists going to still have money to be able to work, to be able to create the art that and where were they going to show them? What was going to happen to the community of artists? And he also does these, he talks about different retrospective shows. He talks about specific artists. I was really happy to hear him talk about Alice Neal, who's someone who I saw an amazing retrospective of here in San Francisco that was blew my mind. And, you know, he talks about her life's work and her place in as a woman at the forefront of art at the time. He talks a really funny story about being in a room, I think it was with de Kooning, and he was in, it just so happened, it was a surreptitious moment where he was already at a gallery and he just glanced over and saw de Kooning was at a painting, and he knew that he'd get if he walked really slow, he was going to try to time a accidental bumping into him and like, oh, here you are, hi, kind of thing. And so he said he's never looked at art as slowly as he did that time because he wanted to be seen as really taking it all in. And then he, you know, where he thought he finally would bump into him, he lifted his eyes and looked around. He wasn't there. He was still standing at the exact same piece, still staring at it. And he just realized, like, oh, the way he looks at art and the way I look at art is so completely different. It's, and it just, you know, I think moments like that where people are willing to make fun of their foibles, I do like. I like that as a humanizing factor. So this is something that I really loved in audio, and I actually think I want to get a copy of it and come back to it because there were artists I didn't know. And so I kind of skipped over some of those. But as an overall collection, I really enjoyed it. And it's made me very, very excited for spring and going to different museums and getting back out again. So it's kind of a mixed bag this week, right? Okay, so let me tell you what I'm currently reading. Going to finish this week my reading with my friend Leo from Leo's Little Book Life. We're reading Emile Zola's Rougon Macau series. This is the Assommoir, and I'm still standing by 3/4 of the way in. If this one concludes strong, like I think it will, this might be a masterpiece in my literary history of book reading. This is so freaking good. Stay tuned, and I'll tell you more when I finish it. I'm also reading this with a group of readers. This is the next in the Author Spotlight series. This is All Our Yesterdays by Natalia Ginsburg. This has an introduction by Sally Rooney, and it is translated by Angus Davidson. Now, many of us have, I was about to say we all, I don't know if we all, but many of us have recognized that this is kind of an old-fashioned, maybe even clunky translation. It's not as fluid as the other translations. And I think this is a shame. I would like to see this have an updated translator. But look at that cover. We are almost done with this. Let's see, 2/3 done. We'll finish this next week. And then for something new, I picked this up because I've had this and I've been meaning to read it. And this is scaring the pants off me. This is you know, I'm a weakling, I admittedly so. And this is very fun. This is Uncle Paul by Celia Fremlin. Look at that fantastic Faber cover here. So good, right? And it has a subtitle, Welcome to the Nightmare Summer Holiday. Enjoying this very much. Want to finish it quickly because, like I said, it's giving me the heebies. So yeah, that's pretty fun. You might not get a wrap up next week. I'm traveling, so for work. So we'll see. But I anticipate I'm going to have some books to share because I'm going to be doing some book shopping on this trip. So stay tuned. Look forward to that. And I hope you all had a really great week of reading. And I'll look forward to talking to you all soon. Thanks so much. Bye.